Hello and welcome to the Hard Questions. It's 35 days into the presidential campaigns as different candidates traverse the country selling their manifestos to Ugandans, and it will be our decision next year as we cast our ballot to choose our next leaders. So much is going on, and I thought I would host Charity Ahimbisibwe, who is the executive director of the Electoral Laws and Governance Institute. She's also an elections observer and expert, to just bring us up to speed with what's happening, to put in some context and analysis on our electoral processes. Charity, it's good to have you on the show once again. Always a privilege to host you.
Thank you very much, Solomon. Most certainly very happy to be back for the hard questions.
Charity, so you have been closely monitoring the elections. We are deep into the campaigning period. I would love to get your general observations as an electoral observer, as an elections observer, as an expert in this field. What do you see? What do you gather?
So first things first, Solomon, the voters register. The voter register update was done a year ago, isn't it? We came here, we said the process has closed off. But that register has not been concluded 1 month into an election. The chairperson of the Electoral Commission at the Uganda Human Rights Commission dialogue last month, October, told us that the voters register, which he gave the presidential candidates at nominations, is not conclusive, and that the register is still being cleaned of dead bodies and is still being cleaned of ghosts. Now that already casts a negative light on an election. A good election starts with a clean voters register, one that is acceptable for all candidates, for all stakeholders, civil society, the voters themselves, and even the candidates. But if the cleaning is taking place even up to 1 month to the election, because we're only left with December, we are at November 11th, today, it means that there is a doubt, there is a shadow of darkness being cast on the voters register. That number may go up or it may reduce, as it was given to the candidates at nomination. Now that aside,
but
the polling areas.
That is very important.
It is. And that's why
I thought that the Electoral Commission had started the cleaning process earlier.
Much earlier, and by January this year, they did the display.
Exactly.
After the display, they did the production of the register. Then they said they had a certain number, which they stated. At the time, it was 21 million. And after that, they produced a register that they gave to every candidate at nomination, because the law requires that once presidential candidates are nominated, they are given a voters register. Now, that register is supposed to be conclusive at the point of giving it to the presidential candidates. But it was not so, not with this commission. Now that they say they are still cleaning the register, and the chairperson himself at the Uganda Human Rights Commission dialogue did say this. The question was put to him, how come? And he said, we are still cleaning it of ghosts, we are still cleaning it of anomalies, and the number could increase or decrease. Now that already casts a doubt. Once you begin to go into elections when not sure of the numbers that you're working with, it casts a shadow. Transparency is already affected. Mm-hmm. And once transparency is affected, then the process, the legitimacy of the process is already being questioned. It can't be that the register cannot have been ready 1 month before an election. Okay. So up to now, we don't have a conclusive register.
And how dangerous is that?
The danger with it is, one, the numbers can be inflated because you don't have a conclusive number you're working with. So where did you base from to say, okay, the number was supposed to be 22 million? The chairperson is telling you, we were still cleaning the register. So at the end of the day, he can produce 32 million people who voted in a particular place, and you can't question him. Because he will say, I told you that the register was still being cleaned. So for you, which number were you basing on to hold me accountable? 21 million? No, I didn't have such a register. The clean register now had this number. So he says he's going to put up that number, but he says he's going to put up that number in December or end of this month if the register is clean.
Okay.
Now, once that number is up, we will hold him accountable according to the new number that would have been put up by the Electoral Commission.
Interesting.
The second one is the question of polling areas. The reorganizing of polling stations was also done at the beginning of this year, and it was supposed to have been concluded in August. But as we talk, 1 month to the election, the polling areas in Kampala are still being worked on. We don't know how many polling areas there are in Kampala. Why? Why is it that the polling areas in Kampala cannot be decided on even before the election would happen? By now, the voters should know, this is my polling station, these are the number of the people that are at this polling station, and this is how we're going to poll. That number in the strategic document of the Electoral Commission called the roadmap had been 42,000. The last dialogue we had with the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, they told us the number was 52,000. So it had gone up from 42,000 to 52,000. But with the caveat, Kampala not yet concluded, meaning the number of polling areas could go up. It could be 56,000. The implication being we have 52,000 policemen in Uganda currently. Those that are registered, the Uganda Police Force has 52,000 men in that force. Now, if you pick every policeman and put him at only one polling station, it means the police will have nothing, no one else left to do any other job. So the government said, no, that shouldn't worry you. We are recruiting what we call polling, they call them polling assistants. No, not polling assistants. They call it polling constables. And the number was put at 100,000 polling constables that are going to be recruited by Uganda Police Force. As to whether the process of polling constables has been concluded and how many have been recruited, that is also a quiet business that has not been put out. Now, in terms of transparency, again, there is a shadow there. The police should come out and say, we have been able to recruit this number of polling constables that we are going to work with, that even them will be held accountable for any kind of altercation that happens anywhere during the electoral process. But if they do not give us the succinct number, then we hold them accountable based on 52,000 men that we know are fully registered as members of the Uganda Police Force. So already, Solomon, as we head to this election in 2026, the number of questions that are unanswered and that cast a shadow of doubt on the end result. The other one is technology. The chairperson of the Electoral Commission says they have introduced technology that will tally with a fingerprint and the serial number. Your fingerprint will tally with the serial number on your ballot paper. Now, should the voting be happening and the serial numbers are not tallying with the thumbprint, the Electoral Commission at any stage will stop the process and pick out the ballots that are not tallying. That compromises the process. At no one time And I think Electoral Commission needs to clarify this because I didn't understand it too well. The chairperson tried to explain it, but didn't clarify it too well. If you open that ballot box, in the process of voting, even if you are Electoral Commission, the results that will be announced will be contested. It will be contested by any candidate within that process. Because what is required is that that box should remain sealed from the time voting starts until the end. So, the other question that the Electoral Commission did not clarify too well on the question of technology was which law, under which law is the technology going to be used?
And actually, that's what I was going to come to.
Yeah, because in 2016, the judges said there must be an enabling law
to support the use of technology
to define the use of technology in an electoral process. Because the law, what the law does is to, one, allocate liability. In case anything goes wrong in the use of the technology, who would be liable? Secondly, to promote the right to vote. Because the right to vote is a succinct right. You own that right, that nobody should take it away from you. You choose your leader. So when you have chosen your leader and somebody else is going to decide that your ballot then doesn't count, there must be a legal basis on which that is determined. Because it comes once in 5 years. So the Electoral Commission chairperson said they are yet to explain to Ugandans on how that technology will work. We are left with 1 month, Solomon. The technology has not been explained for everybody to understand.
And that may bring problems.
Everybody is a voter.
Wow.
And you do not know the technology you're going to use. The presidential candidates don't understand it too well. I think the president himself might be understanding. Maybe the Electoral Commission has explained it to him. Speak to the other presidential candidates. Talk to Munyagwa. Talk to Kasivante. Ask them if they understand the technology that is going to be used. Ask Mugisha Muntu. Ask the other candidates who are on that ballot. Ask them. Even ask the members of parliament, do you understand the technology that is going to be used in elections? This is a very good story that you could do even tomorrow morning.
And I think it goes to speak about the civic education.
Yes, voter education and civic education.
We have not had that. And partly that part of it used to come from civil society. I mean, SEDO used to do a great job, and all these other different, civil society organizations that would go to educate the public, but also hold the Electoral Commission to account and push them to the limits to give explanation to that. But we don't see that vibrant civil society that we used to have then actively, promoting civic and election, information dissemination or holding the government to account. What happened?
So Solomon, information is power, is it?
Yeah.
And every time there is no information, what happens? The world abhors a gap, an information gap. They will fill it with whatever information they want to fill it with. So the Electoral Commission understood that civil society organizations were pinning them on very many issues and understood the processes. And if you remember in 2021, civil society tried to pull themselves together into an umbrella called the Sion U. No, it was called the one that was disbundled. The one that had Sarah Birete, it had UONET, it had NGO Forum. I've forgotten the name, but when I remember the name, it wasn't Sion. Sion was 2016. SEDU was there at the time, but there was also another outfit that civil society wanted to put up, and the NGO Bureau dismantled that outfit. And it was clear then that civil society will not be allowed to come together to observe elections. Even this time we asked Electoral Commission to allow us to come together under the Uganda National NGO Forum, because it is the platform that pulls together all civil society organizations in Uganda. And we were not given the opportunity. So it tells you that government did not want civil society to come together to hold them accountable on processes that they were going to run. That also is an indictment on the process, because democracy is governed by 4 major principles. We've talked about them with you all the time. And one of them being civic participation. Civic participation is also inscribed in Article 38 of the Constitution, that every citizen has a right to participate in the governance of their country. Now, if that article is being ignored, and it's also in the national objectives, that Ugandans will decide, Ugandans will participate in the governance of their country at liberty, and it is a choice they make, and whoever governs will govern on their behalf. Article 1, Clause 3. So it is a combination of factors. There is also donors got fatigued. Government did put a lot of pressure on donors.
And actually,
the donors decided to go into climate change, water, less into governance. And if doing governance, they are doing women participation, disability participation, elderly participation, those small facets, but not the grand look on the process. That's what the donors went into. They were given a condition by the government: you either get off our politics or you get out of Uganda. Uganda's issues will be determined by Ugandans. And so funding has been a big challenge in the 2025
many of the donors
elections.
Actually, like you've said, have not, unlike in the past where they used to support civil society to do
voter
education and accountability, many of them have
pulled back,
taken a back seat on everything elections.
Yes.
In fact, so many of them have said, if you're writing a proposal, don't even add anything like elections in it.
Yes.
And that has affected the work that you're doing as civil society.
It has affected the work we do as civil society. It has also affected organizing. It's also going to affect what we call jurisprudence, or what we call going to court. The processes of going to court after elections. We have jurisprudence as of 2001, 2006, 2016. Those are court rulings that we keep referring to, saying, look, when there were deficits in our process, the courts then decided like this. What jurisprudence does for governance issues is it helps people not to do what Tanzania did. It helps people not to go into fighting and rioting and thinking you have cheated us of what would have been our victory. People somehow sit to wait to hear if justice is being dispensed by the courts of law, because there is a whole system under which you lie. But now, where there is shoddy information, courts cannot decide on a matter without information. No. And courts cannot decide on a matter with information coming from only one area, the Electoral Commission.
Correct.
Why? Because they would be prejudiced. The judgments coming out of there, people would not trust them. People would say the judgment is biased. So they need to make decisions based on information coming from everywhere. Then they sit down as a court, analyze the facts that are presented before it, based on what happened on ground and what the witnesses are saying, and then make a judgment. But now, with a liability on the ground of information coming from civil society and what could have been found, the information that is going to come from the civil society organizations that have been accredited will also be questioned by other civil society organizations who will say, who are those civil society?
You know, it gets me thinking, what has been the impact of the donor cuts on human rights and democracy work to civil society organizations, especially like yours that monitor elections in this country?
So the greatest effect has been almost no work being done. We have had to ask our friends in the regions to organize on our behalf. So what, what happens is that civil society has organized in the Eastern Horn and is looking on from the outside with us inside, giving what we get from the media. So we have now become what we call ethnographers in terms of researchers. Ethnographers just live within an area, observe what is there, and they take it down. That's what we've become. And then we are also documenting from the media. What the media reports, we analyze it based on previous elections, and then we produce that, and we're going to put that together and then give it to them. And so the teams, some are in the Eastern Horn of Africa, but we also have a team in Ghana. The team in Ghana is particularly interested because they want to help democracy grow on the African continent. If you look at Ghana, their democratic process has grown. And it has grown not because they limit civil society from working or they limit vote donors from supporting civil society on governance processes. It has grown because they agreed to assess their processes averagely. So we have a team that is in Ghana committed to this process, but we also have the Eastern Horn of Africa team that receives information from us and they try to make sense of it based on global ideas on governance and democracy, mainly influenced by IDEA, the International Democratic Ideation of governance issues.
You know, when you were speaking, Charity, I remember the time you were not only doing ethnography.
Yes.
You'd be on the ground. You'd be, you know, the vibrant civil society, documenting, holding press conferences, pushing, you know, government, doing civic education, and you'd sort of feel that, you know, the election is well under control.
Yes.
But now you have resigned into just doing, observing and just noting down a few things. And speaking of observing, how would you rate human rights violations committed during these campaign seasons compared to 2021? Or the campaigns, how are they? How would you describe them?
So how would I describe these campaigns? The campaigns have largely been peaceful because they started more than 35 days ago. And in 35 days, we've only had altercations in about 6 or 7 days. Dangerous altercations, which looked a bit like 2021. But it did not get to the magnitude of 2021. Because in 2021, what happened is that we had riots, full-time riots in Kampala on the day, November 20th. And on that day, 54 Ugandans, according to the Uganda Police Force, but the Human Rights Watch said it is over 100 Ugandans that died. And some of the people that died, according to the Human Rights Watch, have never been accounted for up to now. And so the Electoral Commission realized that a bad election is as good as violence. Once there is violence in an election, and the chairperson said this, he no longer wanted to preside over an election where people were dying because of their political affiliation. He said that to us at the UHRC dialogue. I actually clapped my hands for him because of that statement. I thought it was a commitment to ensuring that we do not have people dying because of their political dispensation. So what happened in Mbarara, Chiruhura, and the western region of this country, also Budaka. Budaka, there was fighting between NUP and FDC, Nandala Mafabi's camp. And for a long time, Budaka had been known as an NRM stronghold. But when Chagulanyi went to Budaka, he had a mammoth crowd. So he has been pulling mammoth crowds in places they hardly thought he would pull mammoth crowds, including Kabale. The last time, in the last election, he had about 10, 15 people, akin to what you see Mugisha Muntu having on his campaign trail even this time round. That's what Kabale looked like for Chagulanyi in 2021. He had very few people. But right now, when he went to Kabale, the crowds were big. So they showed up. They wanted to see, who is this Bobby Wine we keep hearing about? Who is this Chagulanyi we keep hearing about? So the interesting bit is that the men of the wave have gone beyond Buganda. The wave, which they said was only existent in Buganda, seems to have spread to many parts of the country. He did not pull a big crowd in Karamoja. He didn't. The president had a bigger crowd in Karamoja, if you did look at it. But we also have a research, and Solomon, a very interesting research, that says the crowds do not translate into votes. Sometimes the crowds are huge and the votes are small. That research is there, and we're able to do it because of our work in civic and vote education and observation that we had, and the freedom that we had to observe processes. We were able to produce that report in 2016. Now, this 2021, what useful report will people in 2031 be talking about this process after we have just been programmed to be ethnographers? What useful data, what useful information will inform the processes of 2031? The data is going to be very limited, and the data is going to be very questionable. So even when that data is produced, it will not be as scientific as the data that we produced in 2016 or even in 2021. Why? Because then that scientific data had names of the candidates, it had names of polling stations, it had actual incidents, things that have been denied to us in this process.
Okay, interesting. Interesting, and we may not have that.
You will not have it, and meaning then that because people are bored, being curtailed, you see when they closed the internet in Tanzania, you saw what the Tanzanians did. They went on riot. When people think you are taking them for granted, they're in a blackmail and whatever, they could keep quiet, they could look like they are clogged, but a day comes when it all goes down.
A semblance of a peaceful campaign period, at least so far. What do you think has changed?
What has changed is, number one, the security forces and the way they behave around the candidates and the people that are supporting them. That they just did not make people disappear. They just did not beat up anybody, except when it came to Chiruhura, and they came some people with enkoni, these big sticks which are used for cows. Those are the people that have first brought the problem in this election. It is so akin to Kawempe, where we saw people who came with hoods and they beat up journalists. And they said, we don't want you capturing anything here. But even when they beat up the journalists, there were phones. The phones captured what they captured, and the information is on the internet. The internet never forgets. Even 30 or 40 years from today, the internet will remember Kawempe for having had goons there. And so the internet is not going to forget what has happened in Chiruhura. We should not forget that we live in an internet age, even when we do the things that we do. So it was good for the security forces to have maintained a certain structure that they did maintain from the beginning of the campaigns for the 32 days that the campaigns ran without any kind of conflict. And people were saying, what election is this one? It is so quiet. Nobody quarreling, nobody fighting, nobody being killed, nobody. I wished it had gone on until polling day. The other reason why I clapped for the chairperson of the Electoral Commission at the UHRC dialogue was because he said, I'm happy, so far there is no incident. I was so relieved. I was so happy that no one was dying. For me, it made me happy that people would be saying there was no one dying.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
I mean,
and
same
I
here.
wish it would proceed to the ultimate end, such that Ugandans can also test what we call a peaceful election, like what happens in Ghana. I just told you that anybody can wake up, you have your views, you have your ideas, you want them, you want people to listen to them, you present them, people hear them and decide whether they like you or they don't like you. And that's it.
Yeah.
Because democracy is a marketplace of ideas.
Well said. What does the next 30 days look like?
The next 30 days, one, I hope, and hope beyond hope, that the security forces will go back to what we had in the previous 30 days. Whether candidates are campaigning in certain strongholds of other candidates, we should be decent enough to let people do what they want to do within those spaces. Like we have said, and like it has been proved scientifically, the crowds do not translate into votes. Don't be fooled that the crowds translate into votes. What translates into votes is the voter on the voters register. You might be in the crowd, you might have so many people in the crowd, and yet you're not on the voters register.
That's true.
And so if you're not, you will not vote no matter what you do. That is the law. And so what people should pay attention to is whether they actually have the legitimate credentials to vote in the 2025-2026
But isn't it so
electoral
late?
process.
I think it's too late. I mean, there was the updating of the voters register for you to go and check your name.
Yes. So what you just need to prove now is go to your political party and check the register that was given to them and see if your name is there. If your name is not there, I'm sorry, you're not going to vote Solomon. If you find that there is a register with your political party because it was given to them by the Electoral Commission, and the Electoral Commission is saying they have one last register that will come out.
So if your name is not there,
You're not going to vote Solomon because you've been told there is a serial number that should tally
with your
thumbprint. And if that serial number and your thumbprint don't tally, you're not going to vote. That is where you should.
Do you worry that that will affect the number of?
Yes. It has been my biggest headache. I will tell you that for this election, two things have bothered me a lot. One, the technology that is going to be used in the election and how it will affect the result and the process. Because ultimately, the technology will help us know how the results are being transmitted. You see what helped Kenya at the time of the heat when nobody knew whether Raila or Ruto had won. There were results from every polling stations which every Kenyan could access.
Wow. Yeah.
So the Kenyans themselves could sit down in their house and add those results from every polling station and arrive at the answer. So whether the results were being doctored by somebody within the system, because they said there were Western bots that went into the system and altered the results.
Chebukati had a lot of issues.
They went into the results to alter them on behalf of Ruto. Whoever altered them within the available space and what had happened, because whoever would count the results that came from the polling station arrived at the same result that the main data center was announcing. Can we achieve that in Uganda?
Listen, Charity, if things are not changed and as fast as we can, what are your fears ahead of next year's
One
elections?
of my fears is that the number of people who are going to be disenfranchised will be very high. The the number of people who will not vote will be very high.
And that will trigger violence.
People who thought, I am on the register, but they find that they are not on the register because their thumbprints are not tallying
with the serial numbers,
are going to be very high. That is my prediction. Let's wait and see. But it is my gut feeling.
But this is where you need to come in strongly as civil society.
Civil society has been weakened, my dear friend called Solomon. Civil society has been weakened to the extent that we can only do so much. We can only work with what is available to us. So when we have these fears, we document them. We become ethnographers for posterity. Maybe one day they will go back to those reports and say, what were these people writing? What did they document? What did they exactly say in those documents? That's all we can say. But I hope we do not degenerate into violence, Solomon. I hope we do not degenerate into that, and I hope we can keep airing it everywhere where we can, in every space. The other time you had started a peace campaign here. I don't know why you have not been sponsored to continue this peace campaign, because that was a very good initiative. I believe in it. I trust it. I hope we can push forward with that peace campaign. Why? Because the over 1,000 people who have died in Tanzania are being buried in mass graves. And in mass graves where their families can't trace them. And there's therefore going to be a lot of anger throughout this term of the next president. Which anger we don't know is going to take them to which direction. We don't want to get there. Uganda smelt blood before, and that's why I was very happy that this process, this 2025, 2026, has been a peaceful process. We need to all push for peace. We don't have bushes anymore. We don't want to fight each other. We don't want to die because of elections. We have been ruled before. We can still be governed in a peaceful way, and we can always decide our destiny in many, many other methods. We can use dialogue. We can use very many internationally accepted standards to resolve our issues without going to war.
All right. Charity, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
And thank you very much for hosting me.
And those two issues, I think, need to be sorted urgently.
Yes.
Yeah.
They do.
Thanks a lot. Well, I don't know. We are midway into our elections and electoral processes, and Charity has highlighted those critical issues that we need to pay attention to. I hope that the Electoral Commission can really fully address these issues, because we're running out of time. We are soon closing the year, and we will be casting our ballot in just a couple of days. These are issues that need to be handled expeditiously. Charity Ahimbisibwe is the Executive Director at the Electoral Laws and Governance Institute. Thank you for watching. This is The Hard Questions.